is carried by OMARC, or the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club, on their repeater, W2MJM, heard on a frequency of 146.805 megahertz, with an offset, a negative offset of 600 kilohertz, and a PL tone of 103.5 hertz. Once again, my name is Neil. My call sign is W2NDG Whiskey 2, November Delta Golf. Let me drop. You do not need to be a member of the OMARC Club to participate in this net. Membership is highly encouraged, though, and information about that can be found at www.omarcclub.org or www.OscarMikeAlphaRomeo CharlieCharlieLimaUniformBravo.org. My assistant, who should check in, is Jim, K2BHM, who's going to be helping me out with this net. And I'm going to start by a little introduction of my own here. Let me drop again. Why am I here? Science and technology is my passion. I call myself an information addict. I've always had a fascination for the unknown. Day to day, I'm an IT professional, which kind of keeps that curiosity and fascination going. I'm also a geography nerd. I'm starting to enjoy history a lot more as I get older, as I create my own, I guess. And I have an interest in botany and other sciences, specifically in the areas of wild and edible wild plants. So we're going to be crowdsourcing a lot of this net, and I do have to send a real big thank you out to CJ, who was hosting the All Things Natural Net here before this, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So to hear the fantastic job he's been doing on this, and I intend to follow in his footsteps as best as I possibly can, but I can never replace him. Another drop. So when I say we're going to crowdsource these nets, the combined expertise of the people that meet regularly on this repeater is staggering. And I'm going to let people drive the topics sometimes. If you have anything you think would be a good subject for this net, and it doesn't have to be about ham radio, I'm stressing that, you can contact me. So before I hand over to Jim, if he's here, for a quick introduction, I want to give out some contact info for myself, and that is two email addresses that will work for me are neil@neilgoldstein.com. Also, W2NDG@ARRL.net. Jim, are you here? K2BHM, are you available?
Thank you for the honor of being the first check-in on a new net, K2BHM. I guess I don't need to introduce myself. Everybody knows that the two of us are real go-to guys that have a real varied background and really excited in science and technology and so forth, and we're looking forward to having a real good time with this net. I have a lot of background and experience in a lot of different areas, from 60 years of experience of fixing things and figuring out what happened and why and how to make it better. So it's going to be a fun ride, and I'm really looking forward to it. And like Neil said, we got a great bunch of guys here, and I'm sure that no matter what topic comes up, somebody's going to know something about it. And everybody is welcome, and their input is very appreciated. And when somebody knows something about it and speaks, then we all know about it. So it's going to be a good thing. Back to you, Neil, K2BHM.
All right, and thanks, Jim. And we're going to take check-ins. So to check into the net, please give me your call sign, your first name, and your location. I will write down the check-ins in order, but the way this net works will not necessarily always be a roundtable. Tonight I'm going to work that way, and we'll explain that after we get the check-ins going. So this is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Please check in now.
KC2 UVP Mike Tivoli. W2 RWS Rob Pine Plains.
This is KD2 IWC Paul New Paltz.
This is KD2 TLF Guy in Xena.
This is KB2 RWW Bob Mobile Kerhonkson. This is KB2 RFI Bob Catskill.
This is KD2 MQE Dave Newport.
Here is KB2 GGF Matt in Kerhonkson.
This is KD2 UEN Double Wolf Park. Is AC2 UQ Paul in New Paltz.
Okay, I didn't hear any doubles, but I'm going to read through the check-ins just to make sure that we have everybody. If you don't hear your call sign, please speak up afterwards. If you missed the first round of check-ins, I'll give a brief pause after this for some more, and we'll check in again later on. So I have KC2 UVP, Mike in Tivoli, KD2 RWS, Rob in Pine Plains, KD2 IWC, Paul in New Paltz, KD2 TLF, Guy in Xena, KD2 RWW, Bob Mobile in Kerhonkson, KD2 RFI, Bob in Catskill, KD2 MQE, Dave in New Paltz, KB2 GGF, Matt in Kerhonkson, KD2 UEN, Bill in Ulster Park, and KC2UQ, Paul in New Paltz. New Paltz wins, by the way. Any other check-ins?
This is Delta 2, Lima Delta Zulu, also New Paltz.
Right, your signal was a little low there. Kilo Delta 2, Lima Delta Zulu, and I didn't get the first name.
This is Kilo Delta 2, Lima Delta Zulu Portable. The name is Tony in New Paltz.
All right, thank you, Tony. Anybody else tonight? Okay, we'll pause for check-ins again later, and I promise not to keep everybody up till midnight. So we'll use the check-in list when we start discussing things. First, I just want to touch on what the net is, why I picked this. So we're hams, we deal with technology, and that being a subset of science in itself. So let's look at what that is. What is science? Science is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the universe. So that's right out of the Wikipedia definition at the top of the page. Facts, testable things. Testable where you can explain something through observations and research. That's science. What is technology? From the same source, technology is the sum of techniques, skills, methods, and processes used in the production of goods or services or in the accomplishment of objectives such as scientific investigation. So, technology are the things that are produced, progress, things that we find to move forward from our scientific investigations. We're opening up a whole universe of things to talk about here, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to go in that direction rather than be more specific. So, some definitions there. I also want to mention that I do intend to get a YouTube live stream up and running. Unfortunately, my account is not quite ready to do it tonight, and I want to get some tweaking done on that anyway. But I'll do something similar to what CJ was doing, where non-hams can also participate in some way or another. So now that we've attacked the definitions, I want to look back a little bit. Let me drop. W2NDG on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Also, when I drop, if you have a comment, just say the word comment and your call sign, and we can discuss something immediately. I don't want to pass over anything that pops into your mind. I know myself that sometimes when we're on these nets and I think of something and too many minutes go by the time I get a chance to talk about it, sometimes I've forgotten what it was that I thought about. Science goes back far, and the technology that it produced. I was looking into this and digging into some history. There are examples of stone tools from 3.3 million years ago, and we're talking about the dawn of humanity before Homo sapiens existed, that they've found examples of this. Let me drop for a second. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, don't worry. Mesopotamia, where they developed metallurgy, the Sumerians that invented writing. Simple machines were invented there. The wheel, the lever, pulleys, and then later on a screw mechanism. Egypt developed the ramp, the inclined plane, the wedge, the lever, a lot of those tools that allowed them to construct incredible and enormous constructions, monuments, the pyramids. And much later on, Egypt invented what's probably the first practical pump mechanism that was invented. And this goes on. There's so much, and we could have multiple nights on the history of things like that, but not tonight. So it's been said that any culture's technology, when presented to a culture that hasn't even conceptualized that particular technology yet, may appear as magic. So we've seen this come up in stories and movies, and obviously, if you took a computer back 300 years and showed it to somebody, they would consider it to be magic, and many other things. So I'm going to start off with an interesting topic, and we can go around, and if you have an answer and you want to contribute, please expand on it. If you just want to pass till the next topic, that's fine. You can just say pass. No judging here, but input and stories and whatever you want to talk about is fine. So let me drop. I'll hand it to Jim first, but the first question tonight is...
Comment.
Name something that's possible now that years ago, either as a kid or a young adult, whatever point in your life, that you thought was impossible. That if you took that technology back to yourself and showed it to yourself, that it would almost appear as magic. So let's think of things, and I'm going to hand it over to Jim first and see if he comes up with one. W2NDG and K2BHM, pick it up.
Comment, KC2UVP.
All right, Mike, what's your comment?
I was the first leader on your list, KC2. I don't know how many lines you're looking at there, but I was the first call-in, and Sisyphus ain't got nothing on me. 73, I'm turning off the PTT button. Don't call me back. I was the first on the list. Jim, kudos to everybody else. Sisyphus ain't got nothing on me, brother. Science and technology.
Okay, Mike. I'll still call your call sign again later when we go through the list again. But yeah, Jim's my right hand here. So, all right, Jim, take it away.
And darn proud of it. Good evening, everybody. K2BHM Jim here. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I justify that by Star Trek came out, in the 60s? And they had a communicator that worked very nicely. And later on, decades later, we now have a flip phone. And did that lead Motorola to develop the flip phone? Were they mimicking what was on TV? Or would it have occurred naturally? But in any event, it's something that came about and is definitely a major part of our life and has grown on its own. And what I'm looking at now is, when are we going to get transporters? So, let's kick that around and see what happens. K2BHM.
Oh, good one. Definitely a good one. And I'll throw a quick comment here before we move on, is that I was, when Enterprise, the Star Trek series Enterprise came out, the people who were writing it and producing it were talking about how difficult it was for them to come up with technology for the show that looked more primitive than what they used in the original series in some ways, yet kind of held up to the fact that it was more modern than what we currently have. And it's an interesting issue they had, was they had to somehow honor the original show but still make it believable. Very difficult process. But they did manage to give the show a steampunk kind of look without making it look like it was ignoring our current technology. So, interesting stuff. All right, I made notes on Jim's. Mike checked in already. Let's move on to Rob. KD2, RWS.
W2, RWS. You know what was total magic? I remember the day I found out that Garmin was selling a GPS positioning system in your hand for under $100. I think I paid like $99 for it. And I ran out into the parking lot after putting batteries in it and said, look, I can pick up 12 different satellites. I was flipped out. And that the technology was that cheap. And then I agree. I mean, the iPhone does incredible amounts of stuff. It's just total magic. If you showed me that 20 years ago, I'd go, no way.
No, that's a good one also. Yeah, whoever thought, and then the first GPS units, were those the ones that they were selling for the mountain climbers and the hikers and aviation use, very primitive. Look what we have now. Our phones do it, the phone in your pocket that is 1,000 times more powerful than the Commodore 64 my dad paid $450 for when I was 17 years old. But good stuff. All right. On to Paul, KD2IWC. Name your magic, Paul.
Well, thank you. I read a lot about what you would call metaphysics, basically physics that we don't understand yet, but otherwise known as occult magic. And so it's amusing. I wonder how much of it is going to just pan out in my lifetime or is yet to be seen. Back to you.
Well, it's a good topic, and we may get into, some really deep science at some point. Quantum technology on so many different levels is actually coming to light. And when you apply quantum computing, which is a reality now, we're in a hotbed of that because IBM picked the Hudson Valley as its location for research and development for quantum computing. But there's a lot of things that fall under your metaphysics category for sure, possibly including Jim's transporter. But thank you, Paul. This is W2NDG on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Over to Guy, KD2TLF.
Thank you, Neil, and Jim also, and hello, everybody. Yes, great topic. Computers come to mind for me. I guess it was 1971, I started going to college for chemistry and had to write a Fortran program as part of one of my classes. And got to run it on the computer, but you just handed in a stack of cards. And so I really got fascinated with the computer and got a job in the computer center. And I would stay there all night and write programs. And when nobody was there, I was interacting with the IBM 1130, which took a giant room, refrigerator-sized 5-megabyte drive. Let me drop. There were, at that time, there were no CRT screens on this computer, so just had like an IBM Selectric typewriter that I would sit at and input things, and it would type back to me. And I thought that it was the neatest thing, but I'd never be able, in my life, I'd never be able to afford one. And now I have several iPads and old iPhones and several Macs and all sorts of computers, and pretty much every computer I've ever had is upstairs in a room for a future project to store. But that was that really seems like magic to me that I have these all over the place. And the radio I'm talking on is basically a computer. So back to you, and looking forward to hearing everybody else's music.
No, it's definitely one that a lot of people would come up with, and interesting. A couple of comments. I think we've talked about this stuff before. The cards, programming cards, punch cards. P&T had bought up cases and cases of unused punch cards and had them for years. And Tim wrote all of his notes. Anything he had to write down was on a blank punch card. Years later, they had cases and cases of floppy disks that were all IBM sound card driver disks that you could erase and reuse. But my late brother Paul, who wrote a lot of the software that our family's company ran on, had to learn how to program in a language called DCL, Digital Control Language. And he was showing me how the math worked, and it seemed crazy. It was, it didn't make sense to me, and I don't remember the particular nuances of it, but it was really odd the way numbers were expressed. And he said that it was right off of the punch cards. And he said, if you look at punch cards and how they expressed math, that's where the DCL numbering system came from. But yeah, I also took Fortran in college. I remember being our final project was something about coming up with a program that was to compute how much of a load of beer that was being delivered was radioactive after an accident. We had an interesting instructor. Let me drop, and Jim, any comment on computing, favorite subject of yours?
Oh, wow. That was a can of worms. That was a tractor-trailer load of worms. Oh, I've played with so many computers over the years, dabbled in assembly language for 8080s, Z80s, 6502s, 6800s, dealt with RT11, DOS, early Windows, VAX BMS, CPM, NPM. Oh my God, the list goes on and on and on. There's many nights of topics there that we could get into. Wow. K2BHM.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I poked at you on that one. Your computer expertise and history goes back further than mine. But when you get an email from me, if it came from my cell phone, my signature on the phone is sent from my Burroughs B7700. It used to say sent from my TI 99-4A, but I wanted to get even more obscure than that. So, all right. Next up, and Bob, I'm sorry, I should have bumped you up to the top of the list, but if you're still there, KD2 RWW, Bob Mobile, who was in Carlson.
Kilo Bravo to Romeo Whiskey, and good evening all. Oh, I have a plethora of different things that have come up that back then, well, astounded me then, and it still astounds me now. I've been fortunate to start my electronics career in the middle of the transition from tube to transistor. And looking back on it now, I cannot believe how small we've gone from the tube to how small currently those transistors are. Just makes you think. Other than that, that's all I got. And I'm almost to my destination, so this will be my last use over you folks. But I'm enjoying listening to everything. KB2RWW, back to that.
Great, Bob. Well, thanks for coming by and checking in. Feel free to stop by anytime. It's a friendly group here. And tube to transistor, I'll make one comment on that. Over my desk at my office in Manhattan, I have an advertisement. I believe it's an RCA ad from a tech journal in the 60s. And the ad says, "Will you pay for the high cost of miniaturization?" And it's an anti-transistor ad. It's one of my favorites, and it shows a bunch of transistors on a table, and then a tube, and a guy in a white lab coat. And then it's a blurb explaining why transistors in the long run will cost us so much more and don't do as much for the money. Interesting angle. But thanks again. KD2 RFI, Bob and Catskill, you're up next.
Good evening, everyone. I think that's number 6 or 7, right? Was I there somewhere? This is KD2 RFI up in the underrepresented Catskill portion of Greene County. Man, things that have advanced over the years that they would never happen back in the day is a lot to choose from. I got to tell you, one of the things that I thought was amazing at the time was these old cell phone bag phones I used to have. Now I'm watching this one company come up with it's like a heads-up display, but for glasses. They use it in the skydiving and aviation world. Military has it on their military planes. It displays all the information on the screen in front of the pilot that he looks right through as he's flying. Now they're starting to incorporate these little heads-up display units and pair of glasses for skydivers to know their location, their altitude, and speed and fall rates and all this other stuff. It's just absolutely amazing the way technology is advancing. Although I know pretty much almost nothing about how it's made or how everything goes hand in hand and works, it is interesting to watch it and see how they take this big old bag phone or even this heads-up display and shrink it down into something you could lose in a pocket in a pair of pants or something. It's incredible how small it's getting. With that, I'm going to wish everyone a 7-3. I got to get up really early for work in the morning. I just want to make sure I stopped in, said hello, and checked in. So I look forward to future discussions. KD2, RFI, back then.
Thanks, Bob. This is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. And I'll throw a couple quick comments at you. You know, my brother was the first person I knew with a cell phone, and he didn't have the bag phone. He had the mobile installation, you know, basically a bag phone installed in your car permanently. As they shrink and shrink and shrink, a funny thing happened, and then phones started getting bigger again. But if you want to know how small they can get, there are these cheap Chinese smartwatches, and some of them have a spot for you to put a micro SIM in them, and it's actually a standalone GSM cell phone on your wrist. So, yeah, they've gotten pretty small. And those heads-up displays, there are some cell phones that have a display mode that creates kind of a polarization effect with the LCD, so that you can put a heads-up display in your car by putting the cell phone up on the dash. It puts, you know, into a mode where the cell phone, when you're viewing it from an angle, doesn't distract as much, but you see that transparent image, which is reversed and then reflected to you normally, that you can just look through when you're driving. So, neat stuff. They tried to get it into cars, but it was a little too much for most people to deal with. But definitely some cool stuff. And we are planning on possibly moving the net up to 8 o'clock. I think we may run it an hour earlier. But we'll keep the regular schedule for the first few times. All right. Next up is KD2MQE, Dave in New Paltz.
KD2MQE. Hey, Neil, good to hear you and Jim. Congratulations. Good to hear you and everybody out there. So looking forward to cool stuff on the net. When you're talking about Egypt and the pump system, just brought me back to one of the first questions I ever brought to CJ on Uber's net was about the pump system at his place, and it's a pretty cool one. And he's got some video about that, but we don't have to go back there now. But that was one of the first things I was thinking about in those days. It was pretty mysterious technology. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer your question. I think the more I find out about stuff, the more backwards I go. So like I'm having trouble with like the Heinrich Hertz kind of like why does the radio even work at all? And I didn't used to feel that way. I mean, I used to take all that stuff for granted and it was just okay. But the more I'm looking at it, the less I feel like I know what I'm talking about. And I don't know if that's true of. It might be true of the younger generation, where right now they're taking a lot of the internet stuff for granted, or the way the web works, and you know, maybe the more as time goes on, we might want to deconstruct that stuff a little bit too. And a lot of us, you know, have this really old computing history, so we know more about the full stack and taking it apart and trends like that. Where the more I'm learning about stuff, the less I feel like I know. So maybe, you know, I'm traveling backwards, and maybe that's right. Anyway, that's all I'm thinking right now. Back to the net.
All right, Dave. Pretty good. And I know how you feel. You know, every now and then I take a lot of things for granted, even with my fascination for everything. And every now and then some little thing will happen that make me kind of stop in my tracks and think, wow, you know, what would myself of 20 years ago think about this. And it's little mundane things, like when my washing machine sent me an email about a month ago. Things like that. As far as the kids, yes, but this is progress. My generation took cars and television, as a normal everyday thing. Where when my parents were growing up, not everybody had a car, and nobody had TVs. And when they first came out, you had one. It was black and white. And if you had more than one TV in your house, you were, Howard Hughes. Every generation will always look at things that way. What's good right now, what's happening is they are teaching the basics of how computers work to the kids in college that do computer science. And the makers movement is really bringing the basics of electronics and how this stuff all works back to the kids. And I think there's more of that than there was when I was their age, which is kind of cool. So we just have to keep cultivating that. This is W2NDG on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Up next is Matt in Kerhonkson, KB2GGF.
Good evening. Just wanted to drop in. Very interesting stuff so far. A lot of thoughts. Yep, the communicator became the cell phone, and the tricorder became the smartphone. And transporter, well, I had a VW transporter, a 65, and there were times where I felt that my molecules were rearranged when I got out of it, but didn't really get any place that quickly. The way the pace of change is astounding. My grandmother was born in 1900, 10 miles from where I live here, and when she was born, it was basically like the 17th century. Except maybe they had kerosene. But yeah, it's kind of astounding. And with that, I'm going to let it go and listen around. Very nice to hear you all, and interesting stuff. KB2GG.
All right, Matt. Thanks for the input. I love the VW comment. I had a neighbor when I was renting this terrible apartment on Binneywater Road years ago, who was into Volkswagens, and he was telling me he had one of the pre-66 buses before they redesigned the engines a little bit, and he was a soccer coach in Germany, and there were a couple of towns they used to load the team into the microbus and go to towns and play other teams, and there were a couple of towns they went to where there was a hill where he would get maybe about a tenth of the way up the hill and would have to ask the guys to get out of the bus and walk because he couldn't make it up the hill with them in it. So it's a little molecular rearrangement going on there. That is a fantastic comment, and that one will stick with me. Great stuff. Bill, KD2UEN. What was magic that isn't anymore?
Well, KD2UEN here. You're asking a simple man a complicated question. When I look at what Jim mentioned, I think it was the chicken and the egg, and now we know it's the dinosaur that came first. The big question is, what was before the dinosaur and did it cross the street? With the other things, transporters, very interesting. I think that's in the works, though. The ability to fly through a black hole and get to another part of the universe would be an interesting way to transport something. I find something in the human aspect of things that really we wouldn't have science without, and that's our ability to think things up in our head and maybe speak about them and then develop them, and our ability to do that. And that really amazes me and has come forth more as I've gotten older and have gone through a little part of history and went from prop airplanes when I was a kid flying to Florida to a jet and automobiles, and I think about my grandparents, and my grandfather's first job was delivering beer in a horse and wagon, and then it actually was my great-grandfather, my apologies, and then they went on from that to the chain drive electric truck and moved on up, and today we have cruise control automatic transmissions. That fascinates me. But I think it's that what fascinates me the most is humans and our ability to always kind of move ahead, problem solve. So that really amazes me. I'll put it back to you, KD2UEN.
W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Making sure I didn't trigger the tone. All right, good stuff, Bill. And yeah, I mean, we're the thinking animal on this planet. Might be a subject for another night. Are there other animals that actually think, or are they all reacting to instinct? I got two cats here. You hear me talking about them all the time. I've got one that'll try to get into a paper bag through the bottom, and every now and then runs into a wall when she misses a doorway. The other one is stealing tools and hardware from my desk. I think that one thinks. You can tell when she looks at you. Anyway, up next is Paul, KC2UQ. Paul, what would be magic to the old Paul? What amazes you today?
Good evening, Neil. Thank you. Thanks for creating, running this net. Thanks, Jim, K2BHM, being the wingman. Great to hear all of you. Well, in answer to your question, Neil, I was born in 1942, so there was a lot of magic. But what was magic to me then was to see a picture. My dad was a ham radio operator, so when he came back from World War II, at that time I was 6 or 7, well, actually I was 4 or 5, but I can remember 6 or 7, he was talking to people from around the country, maybe around the world, but I had exotic QSL signs, so it was a bit of magic, but he explained that to me about what goes into and comes out of things, and I did understand the principles, certainly by the time I was 10. What was magic is my dad and I, his name was Eugene L. Brown, a veteran of World War II, we built a TV together somewhere in the late 40s, early 50s. I don't know if it was a heat kit. I really don't know if they put the heat kits that early, but we built one. His buddy had a radio shop. His name was Perry, somewhere near Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and I tested tubes. But I saw the picture come out, and it was only wrestling and something called test patterns. But I remember I did understand a bit because I had some, but it was magic. But when people came to our house, they just came to watch the test tube. They would walk behind the TV because they thought something was sending picture through it. So that was a bit of magic. But if I could build on something else for a moment, Neil. Thanks for starting us off with an introduction of what science and technology means. One definition of science for me, and it touches on something Bill, KD2UEN, talked about, and your thought about people thinking. Oxford English Dictionary says that science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure, and behavior of the physical. So that takes in the universe that you mentioned, Neil, the physical, but also the natural world through observation and experiment. So that includes humans and animals. And whether all humans think or think clearly, I don't know. I was trained as a scientist. I know Jim has a lot of practical experience and training in science as well. And I am fascinated by how science can lead us to decision-making, understanding, prediction, and control, like how to make better antennas. But some humans have the ability to ignore science when it suits them. And you gave a quote earlier about magic. I'm familiar with, I think, the source of that quote. I keep it in a little book of quotations. Arthur Clarke actually said at one point, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And of course, he was a science fiction writer, so I do think that there are some people who have great minds. One of them, a hero of mine, was Professor Richard Feynman. I hope we'll talk more about him. I know that Guy, KD2TLF, is a big fan. He's influenced a lot of my research and thinking. And so I'm really looking forward to this net. And but I don't assume that all people think clearly. Over to you, Neil.
Well, thanks, Paul. And great input. Pictures. And there's definitely something there because, I can remember the first time I heard streaming audio from the internet, on a dial-up connection. And it was amazing. Even though I could sit there and think, I could just turn on the radio and get this, but the fact that it was coming over the internet was still amazing. And sitting there and thinking about whether or not we would be able to do this with video, but pictures. Love to read up on the people who were involved in the dawn of photography and what people thought about that. There's some interesting stuff there. But, Paul, thanks for your input and thanks for your guidance and your morning nets. This is W2NDG on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Last on our original check-ins would be Tony, KD2LDZ. Come now.
Thank you very much. Just pretty general piece of magic that I think has made everything, or most of the things that everyone mentions here, possible. The internet itself. Just helping my son out with his homework the other day, I realized how incredible it is. Not just having the Encyclopedia Britannica, but the entire amount of information at your fingertips within seconds on a search engine blows my mind. And also, back to the Star Trek references that have been done everywhere involved with healthcare. I'm waiting for the tricorder. That's my big thing. That's pretty much it for me. And thank you. Very interesting.
Oh, thanks, Tony. Another good example. So, this is W2NDG on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Night. I'm going to throw, and this isn't really an example. I have too many. We could, go on forever about this. But I'm going to relate a little tale here. I worked for Radio Shack for a number of years. I was actually in their management training program. I resigned, according to my district manager, the day before he was about to offer me my own store. And I went to work for my family at that point. But I took a course when Radio Shack started selling large format satellite dishes. And it was usually through a local satellite contractor, one of the local companies that did this kind of work. And we would align with one for each store. But we had to learn about them. We had to know what was going on in order to sell them. Let me drop. Somebody in my class said, will the dishes ever get smaller? I heard a rumor that there's going to be tiny dishes someday, 18 to 24 inches, small things that you could just mount on the roof of your house. And the instructor, who really knew his stuff, said, no, it's impossible. And I know that he used that word. I remember this because it wasn't that many years later that a friend of mine told me that RCA and some other companies, Hughes Aerospace, were working on these tiny dishes for consumers. And I said to him, that's not possible. And I spouted the same information that this guy had, explaining why it wasn't possible. He gave a scientific explanation as to why we would never have tiny satellite dishes. So, I don't use the I word much anymore. I really don't, because too many things have gone in that direction. Before we take another round, I'm going to throw it over to Jim for any comments on the list.
K2BHM here. Oh my God, I messed up tonight. I should have been taking notes. There's so many comments. Wow, I could keep this going for another 2 hours, but anyhow. Tubes, transistors, solid state versus hollow state. That's when I got into it. Back in the early 60s, my dad was very good with tubes. And those little grains of sand that those scientists are playing with, they won't amount to much. To do anything serious, you need a good vacuum tube. So that was my upbringing. I would play around with the transistors, and if I had a question, I would have to convert it over to tubes, ask my dad, get circuit theory, convert it back to transistors, and fix it and go from there. So you brought back some good memories there. Anyhow, lots of good things going on here. There's just too many to count. I mean, and when you talk about the chicken and the egg, it brings back the old adage, why did the chicken run out into the middle of the road? Well, because she went late on the line. Anyhow, great start. Really enjoying this content tonight, and next time I got to take notes. K2BHM.
And to us is AC.
That N2 Sierra Zulu Charlie?
Says November 2 Foxtrot Zulu Charlie. Name is Tom in Fishkill. I really intended to be there at 9 o'clock, and it totally slipped my mind, and it just occurred to me. So I wanted to run in there and at least check in.
All right. Well, it's Tom, you said, right?
Yeah, Tango Oscar Mike Tom.
All right, Tom, thanks for checking in. I was about to run another round of check-ins. Also, if you need to secure, I know it's starting to get late, but we're going to go a little bit longer. You can let me know, and I'll not call on you again. I don't think we're going to go and do a round-robin roundtable for the next part, though. We'll just make this voluntary participation. But let me see if there's any more check-ins real quick.
Net control. Kilo Delta 2, Victor Alpha Hotel, Jim.
This is Kilo 2, Lima Delta. This is KD2 TQS.
All right, 4 more check-ins. I think what I'm going to do here is let you guys go through real quick, and you can comment on what we were talking about. If you heard the beginnings of things, I won't get into quite as much detail, but where we ended up was asking the question, name something that the old you from years ago may have considered impossible or even magic that exists today, that is possible today. What fascinates you the most of technology, things that have been developed since you're either a child or a young man? What is it today that you could go back and show yourself all those years ago that you'd have trouble believing exists? So we'll start with Tom in 2FCC.
Okay, in 2FCC. I would say the cell phone. The smartphones now, it's a camera, it's a computer in your pocket. Everybody's got one, and with the 5G or 4G, you get some pretty decent data throughput. I can pick up my phone and say Google and ask a question. When I was much younger, when I was doing tube theory, that would have blown me away. It's miniaturization and Moore's law, but the fact that we're to the point now where just about everybody's got a computer in their pocket that can connect to the internet. I would say that's what it is. And 2FCC, back to that.
No, thanks, Tom. And I think if I showed my 16-year-old self my Galaxy Note here, he'd probably just faint. You mentioned, the Hey Google or Okay Google thing. I'm sorry if I just made a million phones ask what, but voice response, definitely something that I could have brought up too. Watching those episodes of Star Trek, one in particular with Terry Garr getting upset that the computer, the futuristic typewriter was typing everything that she said. And we have it now, and to some humorous results sometimes, but yeah, definitely good stuff. All right, this is Neil, W2NDG, on the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Over to Jim, VAH. What amazes you, Jim?
Notebook laptops. I mean, I've dealt with computers since '85, and notebook laptops, the idea of something the size of a composition pad. I don't know if people remember what those were, but that you could open up, attach, and literally everything is at your... I just don't understand why we have stupid people in the world. You've got a book in front of you that you can carry and have the answers to anything.
I'll make two comments on that. The thickness of some of these. I have a pretty modern MacBook Pro sitting in front of me here, and that's another one. Definitely 16-year-old Neil would have fainted. It's just the resolution of these screens. Just think of the first flat TV that you saw, and you find yourself, how many of us, the first time you saw a flat TV, looked behind it to see how thick it was? And as they got thinner, you kept doing that. Just great stuff there. And my other comment is, we all walk around with what is essentially, to that 1980 whatever technology, a supercomputer in your pocket. There is no excuse for spelling errors. K2LD, Bob, up in Tannersville. What's your pick of amazing technology that your old self wouldn't have been able to comprehend?
Well, I was thinking about that for quite a ways, because I actually listened to the first part of the net as I was driving home. So I pretty much heard most of it, and everybody kind of revolved around the computer, internet thing, cell phone. So I was trying to think of something to be a little bit different, and my answer is a laser. I think that's an amazing piece of technology that things today could not be built without. It actually allowed things to be built, and the downsizing and the miniaturization of it, everything from reading, writing, DVDs to manufacturing of the tiniest of transistors. I mean, everything revolves around a laser. Drop for a sec. And my neighbor who just sold his house and moved, he was employed at the Brookhaven National Lab, and he was zapping things with a 1 billion watt laser. So comes in all shapes and sizes, all different forms, allows so many things to be done today technology-wise, and I own probably 7 lasers that I could think of, not, in my hand at the moment, of course, but a lot of the sights on my weapons are lasers. It's just something that's incredibly useful and allows other things to be used. And one last thing, the answer to the chicken thing, the answer is the rooster.
I heard Jill laughing from the other side of the house on that one. Lasers. As a high school student, I read about Sony and Philips jointly developing CD technology and how it worked. And even the concept of digital audio at that point was amazing. The process of analog to digital conversion and back again. And that's one of the lasers we all had in our houses, and it's funny. CDs are old technology now, but yeah, industrial lasers, super expensive lasers. What's the cheapest laser you can buy? Dollar store cat pointer tool. One of those cat laser pointers. I've seen them in the dollar stores. Go tell an engineer from 40 years ago that, even with 40 years ago dollars, they'd be able to buy a laser for $1. Really cool stuff. This is Neil, W2NDG on the Sunday night Science and Technology Net, and we have Ken in Rhinebeck. What do you find amazing, Ken? Other than mesh Wi-Fi, maybe?
Darn good question, and it's going to be an inverse answer. Again, I was listening in on the majority of the net, just late getting to the initial sign-in. The answer, in terms of the way you're asking the question, is nothing. It goes back to the aspect of think outside the box, and the answer is, what box? The thing that would amaze me is that with all of this new technology and everything else, that people still maintain negative thinking or are amazed at the possibility of everything that science can give us. And I've been sitting here trying to think of anything that would have amazed me, and like I say, there's nothing I can think of. You just take it in stride and know that there's going to be something bigger and better in the future. So it's you're asking a cone instead of a question, and I can't come up with an answer to that. So I'll leave it at that and pass it back to them.
Well, that's fine. I accept that answer. And before I see if there's anybody else out there real quick, let's see if Mike from Tivoli has something he wants to add to the list of things that his old self would have found amazing that are normal today. Mike, are you still listening? Right. Didn't want to leave anybody out. So this is W2NDG, Neil, on the OMARC Sunday night Science and Technology Net. It is 10:05 p.m. I'm going to see if there's anybody else who wants to check in quickly, and then we'll close what I'm going to call the first part of the net, and a more open discussion second part, which won't run too late. And those of you who want to take off and get some sleep, I understand. But if there are any more check-ins for the Science and Technology Net, please come now. Give me your call sign, your first name, and your location. Great. It's a little late for check-ins, so I get it. But an excellent showing here for our first net, so I really appreciate everybody coming, and I appreciate everybody participating. It's some wonderful stuff. If I was to give an award for the best comment tonight, I think it definitely goes to Matt for saying that his molecules were definitely shaken up in his transporter. That's going to stay with me for a while. I want to say, because we should probably loop things back around to ham radio, I'm going to throw a comment in here about that, and then I'll turn it over to Jim for any comments on the same subject. My Uncle Win, W1PVC, Irwin Bruntill from Norwalk, Connecticut, was the first ham that I knew. I believe he got licensed during the Depression. My mother told me that he had a homemade radio in the corner of the living room in their Flushing apartment. And he went off into the Merchant Marine and became a pretty accomplished engineer. One thing about my Uncle Win was that he always embraced new technology. I remember this. He passed when I was still pretty young. I think I was in my 20s. But he got into computers, and he had gotten into CDs, and he was quite the audiophile when I was a little kid. So he had no problem embracing technology. He's the guy that if I took a modern software-defined radio-based transceiver, something like an ICOM 7300 or a Flex radio hooked up to a computer with a large display, or the ASU FT991A, if I took that to him back then and showed him what it was and where ham radio was going to be going after the turn of the century, he would have embraced that. It wouldn't have been magic to him. He was an interesting guy, and I wish he had been around to see me become a ham. But there's definitely people that can accept things like that. So if somebody from 50 years from now appears to you in your home and shows you something incredible, wrap your head around it. Think about it. Apply some science to it, and try not to profit off of it. W2NDG. I'll throw it over to Jim for some comments.
Thanks, Neil. K2BHM here. A lot of great stuff going on here tonight. And, my dad was in the thick of things. He was research and development for the military as well. We lost him back in 92. But he was totally blown away by the fact that a VIC-20 could talk to him. A computer with a keyboard was actually talking to him. That blew his mind back then. He was into things. Back in his day, HF was it, and the new technology coming out was 6 meters and 2 meters. You could take your Harvey Wells transmitter, and with a little bit of modification, you could take a hacksaw and cut away at the base of the 807 final to reduce the interelement capacitance through the tube socket, and you could make 2 meters with it. And that's the kind of stuff that I grew up with. And it's amazing. It's creativity, it's imagination, and a lot of different technology and so forth. And I think that's where we're going. Basically, look and see what's around us and what we can do with it. It's going to be a lot of fun. K2BHM.
And that's what it's about. We're hams. We experiment. We build things. We look to the future. We combine all aspects of technology into our hobby. And we also honor all of the old technologies and the old equipment. And we honor our elders, our Elmers, as we call them. And we learn from them. There's so much about this hobby that is such deep technology when you get into RF theory and electronics, and it's constantly being added to. There's some pretty wild stuff coming out. I mentioned quantum computing before. Quantum computing is now being applied to radio. There is an institute that has put together a quantum SDR that's capable of receiving basically the entire radio spectrum at one time. Pretty neat. I think storage is going to have to catch up to that. We're getting there, though. I deal with storage in terms of petabytes at my job. Just can't even imagine that, thinking back to years ago. Well, this is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. I'm going to close the formal part of the net. I don't have a formal script that I know a lot of the guys run with, but I can simply try to repeat some of the things. This net has been brought to you by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club on W2MJM, our main repeater. And as we mentioned earlier, you do not need to be a member of this club to participate in our nets, but we do encourage it. And we're a friendly bunch of hams and love to increase our numbers. And we have. We have 2 daily nets that I'll mention. Let me drop. Every morning at 8:35 a.m., we have what we call the 8:35 on the 8:05, hosted 5 days a week by Paul, KC2UQ, and 1 day a week by Rob, W2RWS, and 1 day a week by Jed, who I've forgotten his call sign. It's an informal check-in net with a round table every morning at 8:35 on this repeater. At 6:30 every evening, hosted by multiple members of the club, we have the 6:30 check-in net, and that is a directed net, just checking in on everybody, news, information, making sure you're all okay, and sharing what we've been up to and what we're doing. Good to check in on people and make sure that everybody is doing okay during these strange times. Every Thursday night is Dave, our president, runs the Thursday night net, which does get into technology, but gets into a whole host of subjects. And Dave kind of crowdsources the subjects at times or drives them with something that is on his mind. That frequently is a net where somebody will present an issue or a problem, and the members of the net try to help them solve that issue or problem or get questions answered. A lot of fun, and that's Thursday nights at, I believe, 8 p.m. Let me drop and see if there's any corrections in any of the information or misinformation that I have given. Excellent. As I said earlier, I do intend to do some sort of video casting for this Sunday night net. And it'll be interesting. I think I'm going to do it exactly the way CJ was doing it, and we'll see how that goes. And of course, if you're trying to watch and listen at the same time, radio and online, things will look kind of weird, probably like one of those old dubbed movies. And when we do talk to you, just like on the old call-in radio shows, you'll hear me say, "Please turn your radio down," or the other way around. Anyway, I want to thank everybody again for checking in. This is the end of the formal part of the net. we'll have some more subjects coming up, but please, I will repeat my contact information if you have an idea for a future net, and I'll take anything. Any suggestions? Not everything may get acted on, but we might combine some of the ideas into one. But you can reach me at w2ndg@arrl.net or neil@neilgoldstein.com. Thank you all for attending this first edition of our new net. I'm going to close the formal part of the net and open just a casual section with a question, and anybody who wants to hang out and answer it can just throw their call sign out. And that is, what upcoming technology, what preview of a technology, what new technology scares you, and why? Good night all to those leaving.